The Atlanta Story is a podcast highlighting Atlanta's most interesting creators, entrepreneurs, and builders. I'm JC Cadet with Atlanta Ventures and co-producer alongside Jon Birdsong. In today's episode, Jon sits down with Nate Hybl, founder of Gusto. Born and raised in Hazelhurst, Georgia, Nate has spent the majority of his career experimenting, crafting, and serving life-giving food through his fast casual food company, Gusto. What started out as vast and obsessive research around menu design and branding during nights and weekends has transformed into a 12-store company with plans to double in unit count over the next 18 months. In today's interview, we learn how Nate started Gusto, what it takes to reinvent yourself, leadership principles he's applied across his 450-person team, and much more. We hope you enjoy the show and subscribe to The Atlanta Story.
Nate Hybl, thank you for joining the Atlanta Story podcast. We've got a lot to talk about today. Gusto, one of the fastest growing. I see them popping up on corners all around Atlanta right now. And when Gusto is healthy fast food, in my opinion. When I see Gusto, I think healthy fast food. How did that concept actually come to fruition? Because I would imagine there'd be a lot more.
Yeah. I have a question for you. Is like, why doesn't that exist?
Right?
Ever.
We say that in the Atlanta Ventures office.
Well, I'll tell you why. It's because combining fresh and high quality with speed requires taking some customization away. And general train of thought is customers don't like being told no. So that value proposition, in other words, think about it like this. Chipotle does healthier. They're not fast if there's 20 people in line.
Yeah.
Because you got to stand in line and wait on this. Now tech and the new technology that is enabling, call ahead orders and that is creating new efficiencies. But for me, it all started with just being a former athlete. I played college ball, played in the NFL. I was used to eating healthy things and grilled chicken and fruits and vegetables.
All day, every day?
A lot. I mean, just a healthy diet of grilled chicken and fruits and vegetables. And there wasn't really a place to get that. And you can only eat so much Willie's, you can only eat so much of the same kind of vein.
Right.
All the food starts to taste the same. So there's a lot to the story, but in 2010, 11, going through a divorce, recession, losing a house.
When did you move back to Atlanta from your playing days?
Yeah. My then wife and I moved here in 2008.
Okay.
And, thought I was going to have the quote unquote normal life, had a home in Peachtree Hills. And, 3 years later, recession, have no money, really no pathway, and very alone.
What options were there in terms of, you and business?
I think, being an athlete, it gets you in a lot of doors.
Sure.
So I had the classic interviews with the real estate people and the
insurance and
the bank, the investment bankers, insurance. Yeah. How can you leverage your name and whatever exists of this personal brand to get indoors and sell? And guys, I don't know. I just sitting kind of uncomfortably in myself, I just realized I was never going to be normal like that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. By the way, there is no normal. But
you're an entrepreneur.
I wasn't going to have a regular job. I wasn't going to sit in an office. But I didn't know I was an entrepreneur. I didn't know I was going to have the balls to do it, the courage to walk in that fire.
So let's talk about that.
But it's easier when you don't have a whole lot to lose, to be honest with you.
So 2010, you came to Atlanta 2008, 2010, you're thinking about this concept, or are you just seeing things in the market that aren't there? What was that aha moment?
Well, couple things. I started whittling on a business plan with a bourbon and water at night. Very unhealthy, but
Yeah.
start playing around with these fantasies and these dreams. And
What were some of the ideas?
well, the ideas were really just names. The original name was The Alternative or Oxymoron, which is like healthy fast food.
Mm-hmm.
So I started formulating with that literally at a kitchen table. The problem is I didn't know anything about food. I didn't know anything about business, marketing, real estate, all the things, right? Accounting. I've been an athlete for most of my life. So a couple things. I started experimenting with food, and I started a deep dive on brands of this industry called fast casual subsegment. It was kind of new, that phrase. So two things. I fell in love with branding and colors and curves and straight lines and what they emanated. And I started, so there was, out west in particular, a lot of healthier brands,
right?
Tender Greens of the world. Sweet Green, when they were brand new, I was following those guys' story. And I also started playing around in the kitchen. And if I have an aha moment where I fell in love with cuisine, that wasn't like, I'm from South Georgia.
Yeah.
And a big part of the story
Hazelhurst, right?
Yes, sir. Hazelhurst. 3,000 people, I grew up in
south of Idalia, north of Waycross.
That's right. Yeah, we're our own place though, bro.
I know. Just trying to get the...
I'm just kidding. God loves small town America. At the same time, food desert, I grew up really scared of mushrooms and tomatoes and cilantro and basil. And so while I was studying brands, I also was having this, what I call kind of an awakening to ingredients. And there was one particular carrot salad, Moroccan carrot salad, fresh grated carrots, lime juice, toasted cumin seeds, toasted mustard seeds. I didn't even know what those were.
Yeah.
Fresh jalapeno and cilantro. And first off, I burnt the mustard seeds, toasting them 3 different times. I'm learning as I'm going, but actually sneaky, like loving the pain, like loving the process. And the experimentations, like mad scientists in this kitchen that has no furniture and is going to be a short sell with my whole life disappearing. I didn't care. I was swept away in this magical land, and tasting that Moroccan carrot salad just literally blew my mind, blew the top off of my skull, because a carrot salad for me had always been mayonnaise and raisins.
Right.
What the hell? This thing was like, oh my God, the robustness, the flavor, and this new passion. It was healthy, yeah, but also these ingredients and the fact that I'm connected to Morocco. Where's Morocco again? Yeah, but pull it up on Google. So we could talk for hours, but I just attacked ferociously studying food, everything from where things came from to how much they cost to how much they weighed, and brands.
Yeah.
And so that put me on a 4-year path of invention.
2014.
Yes, sir.
So you're mad scientist tinkering in the kitchen. You've got 4 years looking back, there's 4 years since you opened. What were those years like? Did you go raise money? Did you put together the brand first? Did you put the menu together first? Because at Atlanta Ventures, you got to first sell that story, but at least there's got to be something there.
Yeah, yeah, it's difficult. Chicken or the egg?
Yeah, which a lot of entrepreneurs are trying to decide right now.
Okay, that's a beautiful question. I mean, I was doing them simultaneously.
Okay,
the logo and the words behind Gusto, and Gusto means passion and verve and enthusiasm and moxie. That exclamation point mattered. The burst really came from, we have these flavor profiles called Gustos, but they were, for years, they were called bursts.
Okay.
Based off that Moroccan carrot salad. But bursts was not going to work for a lot of reasons, choose your burst. You know, it's like, this isn't gum. But that was the only way my kind of country ass could explain this explosion.
That visceral feel, yeah.
And so my advice would be to go at the product and the branding as hard as you can simultaneously, because I mean, they're related. I mean, they have to be like really side by side and next to each other. They have to speak to one another on both, you know, so.
Well, there's so many people that, I mean, the Gusto brand, it feels mature. It's clean. It's smart. It's healthy. And I remember when Gusto first came out, people were like, is this
a chain?
Is this is this coming in from California or, and I talked to someone this morning who was like, when that first came out, I was like, I thought this was.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Atlanta was a lot different place. The Sweet Green Cava, all these brands weren't here. So I'm thankful we launched when we did, because launching now would be very hard, much harder. But we were, frankly, some of the early cool kids in a fast casual restaurant scene in Atlanta. But again, I didn't know what I was doing. So I'm gaining on it, but I didn't know what I was doing, and
so you're at,
so 4 years. And I got to tell you, I was whiteboarding with an art director named Lindsay Denman, who I still work with. He helped me create the brand, even though I'm a 4 on the Enneagram, big believer in that. I am an artist. So that's creative is my thing.
Yes.
And I was living and dying and failing and borrowing and, trialing food for years. I used to take Southwest chicken salads, curry chicken salads to real estate open houses. Like I was just so hungry for feedback on what people thought about curry, what they didn't think about curry, how raw onions played into people's palate. Because I had the notion that I was inventing a brand that was going to be around for a while, and I didn't want it to be trendy. I didn't want the ideas to be trendy. And so,
and were you going back home and just journaling, or how are you documenting all this feedback?
Drawing, sketching. Thank God Google was a thing. I had thousands of magazines where I was ripping out recipes and circling and highlighting. It was just straight psycho stuff. Y'all probably hear it all the time, but like,
obsessive,
on the edge of psycho, obsessive to get it done. And when I think back on those days, it's quite romantic. Like I miss it, because I wasn't, even though I never made it this far in the business plan.
Right.
I those early years. Now I'm the CEO, and we have 450 teammates. Such a different deal.
Yes.
And I kind of only barely know what I'm doing now, guys, and so I'm just, so thankful to have been able to be on this journey, and hopefully it goes and goes. But the 4 years before were four things: working on brand, working on the product, in a crazy fashion, trying to figure out how to put a deal together, which, by the way, I didn't know how to do that, or what's an operating agreement? I shit you not. So finding the right attorney was a big deal for me. A small business attorney can go a long ways in terms of framing how that looks. And the businesses that are around here there's probably help, but and the fourth for me was getting experience.
Right.
So I had to jump in the restaurant business, which is pretty infamous for chewing people up and spitting them out. And my first job ever was at Maki Fresh, a fast casual sushi joint in Peachtree Battle. The guys who had grown Zoe's Kitchen started a sushi joint. And
I heard you were at General Muir as well for a little bit.
That was number 6 on the path. I worked at Little Osio's. I was a grill guy at the Chipotle on Ponce.
Each one just
which is
learning.
Weird for me now because I have a store 2 doors down.
Yeah.
Every one I was taking notes, but what I was really learning, because I didn't know, was how a restaurant works, how those communities and those teams interact with each other, how busted the reasons why the restaurant business is so transient. Poor communication, poor leadership, and really a lot. employees in the restaurant business haven't had leverage, it doesn't feel like, for most of their life. The pandemic actually reversed that for a couple years.
Right.
But I'll just say 4 years of just making, $9 an hour, and I just didn't care about money.
Yeah.
I was just studying. It was grad school. I was studying.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about some of the leadership principles at Gusto today, because you've got 450 team members. How do you communicate well? How do you put the values that mean so much to you and the business?
Whew, we don't have enough time to go into that. I mean, first off, I believe that clarity, Andy Stanley says, clarity is just number one. But when you're growing a company that requires opening new locations and new geographies and taking on another 20, 30 team members every time, we're not just growing year over year from a sales standpoint or trying to, but we're adding new stores,
Right.
So it is complex. The communication challenges are up and down and sideways and diagonal. We're shooting for clarity. I will tell you that so the first unexpected surprise for me was falling in love with food. I mean, just falling in love with garlic, like truly. Dill, vinegars, citrus. I'll talk to you for hours about citrus. What the hell, man? But the second really unexpected surprise, and it's taken me a while to reflect on this, was falling in love with the humans in the restaurant business.
Yeah. I know she called them team members.
Yeah. Well, a lot of brands call them that. I've been a team guy my whole life.
Right.
What I haven't been is around people who look, sound, and have experienced life way differently than I have. Different shapes, sizes, colors, preferences, religions, and it just doesn't matter. If you're on a team, you're trying to get things done. So I fell in love with like 4 Mexican dudes that I joined at Maki Fresh, that first restaurant job I ever had. And I was like, oh my God, well, I got a lot to learn. In particular, how to serve a guest, because I'd never stood behind a register, and if you've never been in retail, it's really hard, really hard. But I'm getting a little sidetracked, but a big part of my job nowadays is making sure that we don't lose sight of who we are and who we are. It starts with me, but now it's been like a big giant blanket of different colored kind of yarns that are woven together. And from that journey and beauty and open-mindedness, we have put together a brand promise, which for us means is intentionally fostering growth. So it is our job to foster growth with our teammates, personally and professionally. What a thing. What opportunity, what a challenge. And then we have 5 values that the next 10 years of my life, God willing, I'll be working to operationalize in terms of how we behave. It starts with We Are Gusto, which is probably not surprising.
Yeah.
A la We Are Sparta.
Yeah, exactly.
But for us, that means life-giving and passionate. And then we have 2 values. And I promise I'll answer your question. I have 2 values that are kind of on the heart side and 2 values that are kind of on the head side.
I like that.
Heart being lead with grace and serve each other. And on the result side, the head side is be a pro in a very unprofessional industry and quality over quantity. So those 5 together, we chart ourselves on that graph, shooting to be strong at results and relationships. And the thing I'm most proud of right now, once a month, all of our leadership gets together at our office, and we have 2 hours of sharing human stories. And again, we could talk for a long time about from Google Docs to Slack to
Right.
EOS to all these communication tools, but I'll tell you that I'm having the time of my life. You remember those 4 years I mentioned?
Yes.
Architecting a menu? I think the good ones say it takes 7+ years to architect or to articulate a culture. And so I'm right on the nose.
Yep.
And I just got out of a 30-page document where I'm trying to articulate how we're going to behave if you're one of us. What a daunting, exhilarating, amazing. I mean, I feel like I've earned it, but the amount of thousands of people that it could, affect, teammates and guests. I'm building and articulating. And again, it's not just me. I'm doing it with a lot of my leaders, and there's collaboration. But having the chance to do that is very similar to making the menu, and it's hard, and what a thing.
You're someone who's been a leader on the athletic field, but also a leader in business. Give us the true parallels or unparallels that are there.
Yeah, I get this question a lot. I think being confident, generally knowing how to communicate, being motivated, being an achiever.
Yeah.
My love for being on a team and sweating together and accomplishing things together and have nicknames for each other. Like, that's good stuff to me. Discipline, respect, some of these big words you hear all the time. The thing that didn't translate was I thought playing in front of 100,000 people on Saturday made me a leader. And I'd never done payroll. I'd never built a restaurant with $600,000, and this is it. This is it, Jack. Get to the finish line with enough working capital to not die.
Yep.
So being the boss, being an entrepreneur, there's a lot of ways to go about it. I wish that I hadn't been so much of a control freak dictator. I always tell potential entrepreneurs, it's not easy, but doing it with a partner or two seemed to be so much more fun to me than trying to battle all these battles by yourself.
Yeah.
And obviously that requires some give and take and some,
Did you have a co-founder, or this is just...
No, I mean, I had a lot of help along the way. I mentioned Lindsay Denman on the brand side. I hired Sean Grudensky as our chef. He's still with me 8 years later to help me, put the finishing touches on. I think one way to describe me is pretty homemade. And I think I love the pain of doing it the hard way, but hiring Lindsay to help with logos and colors and Chef Sean to help with, button up recipes and things. They're not co-founders because they weren't a part of the journey and raise the money and all that. Sean's a sweat equity partner of mine now. Every story's different. But for me, I feel like I was fighting the shadows of a past, and I don't even mean the lows that I mentioned earlier. I just mean I didn't particularly like being a football player, like known as that my whole life. Yeah, like that's all anybody ever wants to talk about. Not anymore.
Right.
Not anymore. And so I just wanted to be my own person. And
well, let's dive into that a little bit more. I read an interesting thing from Ambassador Andrew Young, and he said, the key to living a successful life is to reinvent yourself, 3 to 5 times through it, right? And, this is someone that was part of the civil rights movement, then became mayor, then became, get the Olympics here, then ambassador. And so he reinvented himself several times. Can you walk us through the art of reinventing yourself?
No, I'm just kidding.
Was there a moment when
I think there's an absolute beauty in that reflection, and I think it's right. I'll probably say it differently, guys. The way that I would describe doing that is chasing passions and knowing thyself. I believe that probably if I ever started a nonprofit, on the walls of Gusto locations, a Dale Carnegie quote, it was on the cover of my investor deck, It says, today is life, the only life you're sure of. Let the winds of enthusiasm sweep through you. Shake yourself awake. The last sentence is live today with gusto. And I have it on the walls for context so people would know it's gusto and not gusto.
Right.
Try to reinvent this old Americana spirit. I didn't, I'll put it to you this way. I didn't really know who I was until I was about 32. And I've had therapists tell me, well, thank God you found out then.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of 50, 60, 70-year-olds that never really found out who they were. So part one is, who are you? And then part two is, do you have the courage to walk into that fire? Because it may not make you rich like you think. It may not fit the constructs of your coach, your mom, your dad, your pastor, whatever those things are. And so I'm on fire right now I don't have it figured out yet, but I think a part of my journey and my next reinvention is going to be getting people out of their own way to find themselves. What a gift to be able to get. I don't know if I can do it.
Right.
But like, what a gift. If I'd have really known who I was, I probably wouldn't have got married the first time. But I was doing that because that's the next thing.
Yep.
This is the next thing. This is the next thing. I'm supposed to make this much money. I'm supposed to have this house. I'm supposed to have 3 kids by now. So, bullshit.
Yep.
Sorry, I don't know if I can cuss on here.
You can just speak freely.
You can just
speak freely.
None of that's true. So
well, it takes a lot of courage, especially. I think you said it best around particularly the retail space, right? Here's someone who's, star on the field, and then, years later, they've humbled themselves to be, serving.
Yep, taking the trash out.
Yeah,
wiping down tables, doing dishes. Dealing with customer problems, getting yelled at, whew. Yeah, the restaurant business, I was already at kind of the bottom of the barrel, but it was so humbling. I walk around with a towel over my shoulder, wearing a T-shirt, and I was still 220 with, 6% body fat, but it was just a different thing. So what I found in the past is that going from idea to entrepreneur, that first step is pivotal. And there's people that write books about this, but that first step.
To just doing something.
Just going, moving, that first step, to me, separates the doers from the sitting around a campfire. Wouldn't this be great if? Just one step. Now, the other problem is it also takes a lot of time and patience and toughness to actually see it through.
Right.
So it's no surprise to me when people talk about how low the success rates are. It's very, very, very difficult. And you borderline on the edge of losing your mind. Yep. Obsessive nature. I'm not sure I answered your question about reinventing yourself.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm on version 3 or 4 right now. I think it's a beautiful idea, and I think what he's getting at is nobody wants to just wake up every day and look around and go, what? It's boring. It's unfulfilling. You can only mow the yard so many times. You can only play fetch with the dog, whatever, right? So I think it comes back to motivation, inspiration, and for me, shaking yourself awake when you're 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever that is, to say, you know what? I'm damn passionate about marine biology. I mean, I never really had the, courage to say that. But I want to do a little bit of studying. And if somebody say, that's ridiculous. You're going to go to school for 4 years and then you're going to move to Alaska? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But that's the thing that I'm super pumped about and passionate about. And why wouldn't you want to live on purpose? Yeah. To those things. But they just don't fit what most of the world says you should be doing.
This podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. Check out our website to access many resources, including free tools and guides to start a business, a calendar of our upcoming events hosted at Atlanta Tech Village, and a lot more content around building companies. Let's talk about growth. Let's talk about growth of your team members, but then also growth of Gusto in the sense of numbers of locations, right? I mean, Gusto's all over Atlanta. I saw you open one in Athens. And, from what I heard earlier, you said 10 years. Is this something that you want, your kids to operate? Is this something that you want to get to a certain point and sell to a PE? What's the growth vision from the business side?
Well, I've been getting that question a lot over the last couple of years, and generally my answer has been, I don't know. And it's a hard question to answer, but I'm gaining on it. We have a plan for the next 3 years in terms of number of units and revenue targets and geographic, places. And
anything that you can share?
Right now we have 12 units, and by the end of 25, we'll be around 25, and we'll be an airport brand because I think the product is meant to be in an airport. We may be selling sweet potato chips in a retail way, those types of, ideas. So we have the next 3 years planned out. The next big thing for me is to plan the next 10 years. I go back and forth. I have a 1.5-year-old named Isaiah, and up until recently, 1.5 years ago to be exact, I didn't really have a reason to think about, would your son work here, or is that one of the things? I was doing it for my own personal reasons, demons, whatever those things were, to get this creation out of my soul and on paper. And ever since then, I've just been hustling my ass off to do the best I can with a lot of wonderful people around me, do the best I can for them. I've been very fortunate to have investors that have given us a lot of freedom. And so a couple of decisions that I know we could franchise is the fastest way to grow quickly. It's just not really who I am. It's not in our DNA. Like, we want to do things our way, and that's usually slower. And I said quality over quantity.
Yeah.
So the best way I can answer it right now is we think it's hard to say it after 8 years because I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted, especially pandemic asterisks. But I think I'm looking at the opportunity to continue. If we pull the right levers and make the right moves and go aggressively in the right directions, we have a chance to build an iconic brand that is around for a long time, and that's just rare air.
Very
that
rare.
Might be ridiculous and audacious to say, but that's what we're staring at.
True, Kathy, he believed it.
Yep.
The Rogers. I mean, there's something in the Atlanta ecosystem.
It takes a certain kind of crazy. And the Cathy family, Dan Cathy, he was at Gusto #1 long time ago. Come after church every Sunday. So it was pretty sweet.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about the not only growth plans that you've got, but also, how do you balance it out with, we know entrepreneurship is 18, 20-hour days. How do you balance it out with the 1.5-year-old and the family? And what lessons have you learned now that you're a father? And
yeah, I thank God that didn't happen until 8 years in. I'm sure I would have figured it out, but Gusto has been my child, and I think entrepreneurs say that. It may sound silly, but that's the closest you can describe a business that you birthed. It's an organism. It eats, sleeps, it breathes, it dies, it gets cancer. It's truly. So I've had a child, and so my biggest challenge has been separating Nate from Gusto. And a big part of that was bringing in an EOS, the operating system.
Employee
I don't know
operating
if you guys talked about that. Having that structure has helped a lot of people. We have our own version of it, but like it really helps. So the simple, quickie answer is I've had to get coached into understanding and have some self-awareness that I can't do everything myself, that I'm a control freak, that I'm a perfectionist, that I'm critical to a fault, high expectations. But I also strive to be a compassionate leader and somebody that folks can believe in, and I do the right things. And so I have pause written down here because I'm working on pausing. I have Sharpie, a little pause symbol on my hand that I look at all day, every day, because the next stage of growth for me is vetting and hiring correctly and delegating, and then lifting them up and knowing my role within the organization instead of I've been wearing like 20 hats for a long time. So,
are you able to do any recreation at all?
So, I'm just now getting into this. So as I pull my head out of the sand to being operations kind of guy, marketing kind of guy, brand guy, menu guy, social media. Hell, I was running our social media until about a year ago.
Let me ask you this. Can you beat your brother at golf? Because that was the first time I've ever heard the Hybl name was Georgia golfer.
Yeah, Ryan. Yeah, my bro, All-American at University of Georgia, is now the men's golf coach at Oklahoma, which is where I played college ball. I am just now allowing myself. I've started. The pandemic got us all into some bad, funky habits. So twice a week now, I work out, and it's been years since I've done that. And I spent a lot of time outdoors with our chief of staff, guy by the name of Cody Hicks. And we picked a moment in time. So this September, we're doing rim to rim to rim.
Grand Canyon. Oh, yeah.
Grand Canyon.
Wait, so rim to rim to rim to rim?
Oh, no, rim to rim to rim. 3.
Wow.
So it's like 50 miles, 2 days.
Yeah, it's 28. Is it 20? Yeah, 23 or
something like that.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
So, and we built a training plan. So 2 days a week, if you're around Piedmont Park early in the morning, you'll see Cody and I out there with ruck packs on, just getting it and doing stairs, stadiums, things like that.
What time are you guys out there?
I'm loving sweating again. It's intentionally, and I don't mean in a restaurant, and I don't mean hustling a catering order. I mean working.
Working.
What time?
Yeah, what time are you out there?
6, 7, 8. It just depends.
Yeah. What that's
So we're preparing for this massive event where it's man versus himself. Maybe God gets closer to me. I'm not sure. I mean, it's the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
It's a little daunting, but also, achiever, athlete. I got to think I can do it. But I'm not just going to show up and say let's hike for 14 hours in a row, 2 days in a row. So we're training for that, and I love the game of golf because I think it's one of, if not the best games on the planet, but it also gets you close to nature, which is a beautiful thing. So I really miss it. But for somebody who grew up playing at a pretty high level, I can't do it as well anymore. And so it's grown more frustrating.
Right.
So until I can get to a place where I could actually practice and get decent again, it's almost more pain than it is fun.
Yeah. When you go back home to South Georgia, Hazelhurst.
My mom and dad don't live there anymore, but
okay. So I was just going to say,
but I go back.
How and this may go back to the story when we first started of telling the Gusto story, but how do you bring in your kind of first life of athlete into the Gusto story now that you've got a platform, right? I'm sure professional athletes are reaching out to you all the time saying, I got to figure out who I am.
Well, they may be, they're not yet. I'm just on the edge of sharing these types of stories.
Sure.
There's a disconnect between where I've been, where I grew up, which I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. I'm still tight with my Hazelhurst crew that I grew up with, and my brother and I grew up playing every sport, running around, neighborhoods. So growing up in a small town is amazing. I would like to think that I'm not unapproachable, but I think to that small town person in general, like they don't really know how to approach the conversation. I think because I've gone and done something just totally outside the box, outside their world.
Right.
And it's led me to the clarity that gives me is that Gusto has always needed to be approachable, and that I wasn't ever preaching. And you'll rarely, if ever, hear us say healthy. Our guests, our customers say those things about us.
Yes.
But our mission these days is to create life-giving food, connections and spaces, to create life-giving food, and part of that is when you see a billboard and the old buffet mentality, that's where we're coming from. And some people still value that. And I'm not preaching.
Right.
But, to feel overfull is life-taking.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to figure out where we fit in the environment. But at a minimum, I don't want it to be condescending. I don't want it to be like, you're scared of ginger and you're closed-minded,
right.
And by the way, you're overweight and you're not paying attention to the right things. It's not that. My story in its best and purest form is, come with me. I want you to taste this Moroccan carrot salad. Come with me. I know you're scared. I hated mushrooms my whole life. Now I can't live without them. I truly believe a lot of people like a lot of things. They're just like getting their own way. And so it's more like, let me share these things. I want to share these things. If you don't want them, that's fine. Everything's not for everybody, but come with me. I want to talk to you about pesto.
Yeah.
And I just can't believe that you're not going to be on board with this and not slop, ketchup or ranch on every single thing. So, gosh, we could go on and on and on, but when I go back home, I'm grounded because, good people, caring about, good things and Friday night lights and, it's critical for me not to feel disconnected, but it's inevitable that I get one of the questions like, you ain't one of them damn vegans, are you?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, I'm not. But, there are so many more diets and lifestyles than this plate of brown food.
Right.
And by the way, nobody's really talking about this, even though our hospitals are going to be overrun in the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years because of processed foods. And I'm still trying to figure out how to articulate where we're in that conversation.
Yeah.
But we all like the idea of a shot of life and basically feeling good.
Yep.
And not bad.
Well, we at Atlanta Ventures, we like to see white spaces in the market, and we're still bewildered that there is not more healthy, quick serve fast food. And I'm talking like from here to Clayton, Georgia to,
well, unfortunately,
down to
there's a socioeconomic part of it. There's the haves and have-nots. We don't have time to go into this, and I'm not an economic expert, but I do know price sensitivity, and I do know the difference between, a lot of fast food companies have been manipulating and cheating people on a short-term value proposition for a long time. Let me give you as much food, mom of three, who has two jobs, for as little as possible. Well, obviously, there's a trade-off there. And the trade-off is, health problems that come. But that mom might just be surviving. She might just be making it from paycheck to paycheck. So the pandemic in particular was very difficult for me because I want to keep our prices as low as possible because I want to serve better food to as many people as possible. And if you come in Augusto, like the one on Ponce, you're going to see construction workers. You're going to see city work. It's not just rich folks
Right.
that are eating at Gusto. I want to make it as accessible as possible, but unfortunately, inflation pushed our cost of goods sold up 10%, behind the curtain. And so people love to say, y'all ain't giving us enough food for this, or this is too expensive. The reality is that our margins are thin and tiny, just like everybody else's. It's just that's how busted the system is. Whole Foods margins aren't any bigger than anybody else's. That's just how much it costs to do something that well at scale. And so we just have like massive food educational problems and black holes. Priorities are out of whack. And again, we're trying to figure out where we fit, but at least we are trying to represent on the good side, in our opinion, on the food and the human being part of the restaurant industry.
Well, I'll tell you what, y'all have created a space for that opportunity to, I wouldn't say preach, but more or less educate and storytell, just from my humble perspective.
Healthy is a hard word just because that means different things to different people.
Right.
More gluten, less gluten, more protein, no protein, all plants, no plants.
Yeah.
So that was a no-win battle that I chose early on strategically. Like, we're not going to be healthy. And so again, life-giving for us is not only about colorful food going in your body, but the interactions that we have a chance to give you life, and you have a chance to give us life. And our spaces are meant to be bright and alive and give you energy as well. So that's kind of where we're sitting at this moment. If we continue to get bigger, I'm sure we'll get sucked into health-related conversations. I'm just thankful that had the courage to take that first step and come up with a product and a process that can tackle high quality with speed. And our last 5 locations have drive-throughs. And most of our customer base wants to come to they don't even know we have a drive-through. Like, I got a massive education problem of our own. They're like, we didn't even know there was a drive-through. This is a cool building. This is fast casual, right? So we may have been a couple steps ahead of what the customer base was wanting or used to or willing to go towards years ago. But I appreciate, it was kind of the first words out of your mouth. Our value proposition is high quality and hopefully speed. And we are trying to figure out how to maximize that. You got to think that efficiency and convenience isn't going out of style anytime soon.
Yeah.
But how your product plays into that is different for Sweetgreen. It's different for Cava. It's different for Chopped, and it's different for Gusto. So
we always wrap up the conversations, and this one I'm interested in learning. But why Atlanta, and what has Atlanta done for you? Like, you could have built Gusto in Oklahoma. You could have built it.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, why Atlanta is because my life's journey brought me here, I guess, back to Georgia after being in Oklahoma, Cleveland, Jacksonville, Europe, come back home-ish.
Red Georgia clay.
Yeah. Largemouth bass, How did you phrase the second part of the question?
And what has Atlanta done for you?
Oh, man. It's given me so much because it's such a diverse city and it's so alive and it says yes to things that it didn't say yes to last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's on fire. It's progressive. It's humbled me. It also, I mentioned earlier, gave us an entry point into the South. So there's times where I'm like, why in the world am I trying to sell healthy food to Southerners, when there's a line wrapped around 3 times at Chick-fil-A, fried chicken and French fries and Coke, sorry, that's what it,
Yep.
They have other options nowadays. But as hard as that is, there's also tremendous validation if you can get through that to say we are part of the change, and now we are hopefully a brand that more and more Atlantans are proud of what we represent, proud of what we sell, proud of all the blood, sweat, and tears as we go to Tennessee and Florida and new markets and try to translate this life-giving energy to as hard as it's been, now we do have a big backyard where more and more people know us.
Oh, yeah.
It's intimidating to think about going to a new market where nobody knows a dang thing, and that's the next big challenge for us.
Nate Hybl, thank you so much for being part of the Atlanta story.
I'm honored. I'm honored once you get me going talking about this, I come back to life. So thank you for giving me a chance to tell my story.
This podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. It was co-produced by JC Cadet and Jon Birdsong. If you are looking to start the next $300 million business in Atlanta, check out the studio at atlantaventures.com and the companies we work with who've done it before. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it at your next coffee meeting or dinner greeting, rate it, and write a benevolent, eloquent review.